Hello and welcome to Regional Roundtable. I'm Will Stewart, President of the Greater Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce and your host. Regional Roundtable is a program of the Chamber that aims to explore issues of economic development importance to our region. Our topic today is agriculture and agritourism, and our guest today is Commissioner Lorraine Merrill, Commissioner of the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, Food and Markets. Did I get all that in one breath?
Very good.
All right. It is a mouthful, much like the Chamber's full name. But welcome to Regional Roundtable.
Thank you, Will. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, of course. Well, let's start at the beginning. Tell us who you are, what you do, what the department does, and why it's important.
Sure. So I'm Lorraine Merrill. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food. And before I was Commissioner and continue, I'm also a farmer, part of a family-owned dairy farm business, and had worked as an agricultural journalist previously as well. The Department of Agriculture is a small state department, which I always say touches every household in the state, whether people realize it or not. We are in charge of regulating, carrying out the state laws in terms of animal health and protection, plant health and protection, regulating all pesticides, sales and use in the state, lots of other environmental protections involving agriculture. We do the National Organic Program certification, provide other services to farmers so that to help them market their products, such as the Good Agricultural Practices Program certification that helps farmers to sell to chain stores, like say to Hannaford or something like that. And we have the weights and measures regulation for the state, everything that's sold by weight or measure, scales, gasoline pumps, and agricultural development, which is our economic development arm, which promotes farms, agriculture, agritourism, and so forth.
So if you eat or buy things, your department is kind of important.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, tell us a little bit, kind of to set the stage. I know this is a show about economic development, and
Yes.
Agriculture may be something that people will often, I think, at least me before I learn more about it, maybe kind of separated. It's not maybe big buildings being built or anything like that. But I know there is a component. But just to kind of set the stage, tell me about agriculture in New Hampshire.
Agriculture in New Hampshire is it's very diverse, and it's located everywhere. We have farms in all 10 counties and in towns of every size, from Manchester and Nashua on down to really rural areas. In recent years, we've had a real renaissance or resurgence in agriculture in the state. So while after a long period of declining numbers of farms, which is also a national trend, we have had an increase in the last 2 agricultural censuses, which are done by USDA every 5 years. Between the two, we had a 30% increase in the number of farms. So
30%.
Over a 10-year period, correct. The last census was done in 2012. So they're smaller farms typically, the newer ones, and continuing to be diverse. The 2 biggest commodities or crops for New Hampshire agriculture are dairy and ornamental horticulture. And then we have the other third is a great mix of poultry, eggs, other livestock, fruits and vegetables, berries, Christmas trees, maple syrup. It's really diverse. And I think this time of year, especially, people are seeing and experiencing a lot of the diversity of what we have to offer in agriculture in the state, where folks are going to farms, to orchards, and taking in corn mazes and picking pumpkins out of pumpkin patches and so forth.
It really seems to be kind of a year-round thing too. You mentioned, here in the fall, of course, we have the orchards. Everybody's picking apples and such, and then even winter and spring, we're talking maple syrup, and then pick your own blueberries and strawberries in the summer.
And increasingly, we have winter farmers markets. We now have close to 100 farmers markets during the typical farmers market season.
Including one here in downtown Derry.
That's right. That's been a great market. And we now have close to 30 winter farmers markets happening all around the state. And that's a chance for farmers to extend their selling season and also their growing season. And because of the increased demand for local food and the ability to sell in things like the farmers markets, we have farmers who have been growing things like fresh greens through the winter in high tunnel greenhouses. So it's just amazing the change. It's always evolving agriculture, constant change, and that's it's great to see the market demand responses here.
Now that's kind of leads into my next question. That what the 30% gain over the past 10 years in the number of farms in New Hampshire, what's driving that? What is the market demand that's leading people to start a farm?
Well, I think it really is. A lot of people are rediscovering that locally produced food, it tastes better, it's fresher, and people recognize that when they buy locally, they're really helping their local economy. Tremendous multiplier effects from purchasing local farm products. Farmers we often don't think of dairy farms as being local food because it generally has to be processed, pasteurized, bottled, and so forth. And so people don't always recognize that the milk that they're buying in the supermarket is most likely a local or at least a regional product. And the amount of money that goes into our local communities from these farms, dairy farms famous for having narrow price margins.
Thin margins, yeah.
But it's a large volume business, so a 100 cow farm, which is a little smaller than the average size dairy farm in New Hampshire, is going to be a $500,000 a year or more just for the milk sales. Wow. All that money is staying in the community right here in the area, whether it's paying wages, buying supplies, service people, other trades and suppliers. So there's really a great benefit in terms of the local economy, I think, as well.
I would agree with that. With regard to farms, I know you said most farms are small. What size are we talking about here?
Well, and it depends on, you can talk about size of farms in different ways. Right. The number of acres, or the revenue, the total sales generated, the number of, if it's a livestock farm, the number of animals. So in terms of acreage, we've seen farm size shrinking. The average farm size has gone down a little bit. We have, because of the increase in these smaller farms that are marketing more directly to consumers, the dollar value of the total sales, 96% of our farms, the USDA has counted about 4,400 farms in 2012, the last census. 96% of those are classified as small farms with gross sales that are under $250,000 a year. But the other 4% can be up to several $1,000,000 a year. We certainly do have a smaller number of multi-million-dollar farm operations, different types of farms, and so those are significant economic players in their communities as well, often hiring numbers of people and again generating all that income into the community.
Right, the multiplier effect
that
you mentioned. Now, just out of curiosity, what qualifies as what do you have to be what are the criteria to qualify as a farm?
Well, when USDA does the counting for the census, it's very minimal. It's that sales of $1,000 a year or more, or the expectation of sales of that nature. So maybe there was a crop failure or something and didn't make it 1 year. So that really counts pretty much anybody who's in the business of raising animals or crops for sale.
So not your backyard.
A home garden would not be. A homesteader even that may have raised animals and grow all kinds of food for their own use. It might certainly be producing more than $1,000 in value, but if it's not being sold, it wouldn't be counted as a farm by USDA. But it would be an agricultural activity, you know.
Certainly,
definitely.
And yeah, a lot of hairs to split.
Right.
I know. With regard to this region, the Greater Derry, Londonderry region, I know has certainly an agricultural heritage.
Tremendous agricultural heritage and history here.
Here in Derry, of course, with Derry.
Dairy, potatoes. The Londonderry is absolutely famous for apples, going back many years and generations. There was a time when poultry, particularly for laying hens, but also meat birds. I know John Dodge of Dodge's Agway, who is really a poultry expert. He likes to remind everybody that I think back in the 1940s there were more chickens per square mile in Rockingham County than any county in the country.
Really?
Just think of it. People can't imagine now. And so, but you're right, Derry with the Hoodcroft farm. I remember coming to this farm when I was in 4-H and judging cattle there, and it was a beautiful farm. There are just there's a rich and diverse agricultural heritage here in this area.
So some like the Hoodcroft farm are long gone. But a lot of stuff still remains. What kind of agriculture do we see here in the region these days?
Well, you see quite a bit of fruits and vegetables being grown and both sold directly to customers, whether it's at the farmers market, at farm stands, CSAs, and also
community-supported agriculture.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Will. Yes, community-supported agriculture. There are quite a few farms here in this area that are large enough that they sell to wholesale customers as well, whether it's restaurants or stores, including big stores. There's Rockingham County, the ornamental horticulture is also, so flowering plants, shrubs, trees is also important here. Rockingham County and Hillsborough County, which you're right next door to the county line, so
right.
It gives you the. They are the 2 of the top 4 counties in New Hampshire for sales. Those being number 1 Merrimack, number 2 Grafton, number 3 Hillsborough, and now 4 is Rockingham. Used to be Rockingham and then Hillsborough, but they switched. We got a competition going here. 3 of those 4 counties are our 3 most urban counties. And so people are really surprised often when we share those kinds of statistics that there is still a lot of agriculture here. And the reason why there's so much here is because it's where the people are. It's where the market is, the mouths are. In fact, Hillsborough and Rockingham counties are 2 in the top counties in the country. So out of the 3,000 plus counties, they are in the top 50 for direct sales from farms to consumers. So farm stands, farmers markets, community-supported agriculture. That's really significant. And I think that's, again, an indicator of the increasing demand for local foods and the fact that urban areas where people are located can really support a lot of agriculture. The American Farmland Trust has done numerous studies, they term farming on the edge, that show that the largest amount of high value perishable crops, so like fresh fruits and vegetables, milk, eggs, are produced within the urban influenced counties, you know, on in the path of development, and that those best soil, most threatened areas for development are producing some of the most high value agriculture. They have a map, and the Derry, Londonderry, you know, whole Rockingham County, much of southern New Hampshire is just bright red for being that exact high value agricultural soils under a lot of threat from development.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's something that if we want to make sure we can continue to produce all this good local food for our neighbors and our residents, we need to protect more farmland too.
Certainly, and that's one of the other things I wanted to ask you. What are other challenges that kind of face agriculture here in this region and across New Hampshire?
Well, that's the high cost of land.
Yeah.
Which faces lots of people in many ways, but it's especially difficult for New England and New Hampshire farmers to compete with the farmers who are producing food on, you know, much larger expanses of farmland at much lower prices than what it costs here in New Hampshire. So that is a huge challenge, the high cost and the lack of availability, that there just isn't that much of it left. High costs of labor and the difficulty of finding people who have the skills and really want to work the hours and the kinds of hard work that farming can certainly involve is another one. We have much in common with other industries in that regard. Labor, the high costs of energy here in the region is another challenge. And, you know, we have the situation which is especially felt here in southern New Hampshire, but it's something that's both a strength for our farmers and also a challenge, is that the farms are located right in our communities amongst all these neighbors, both new and old. And that puts people close to the market. It makes customers right handy for direct sales, which can help to counteract those high costs. But it also means there can be more opportunities for friction, where you have people coming from maybe more urban areas and not being so tolerant or understanding of the fact that producing food requires noisy equipment running, sometimes early in the morning, things like different smells and
I used to live downwind from a pig farm. I know very well.
Tractors, slow moving farm equipment on the roads and things like that, and that can really make things difficult for farmers.
Certainly a share of challenges, but I think there are some bright spots too, it sounds like.
Definitely.
One of the things we mentioned earlier, agritourism, it really seems to be kind of a bright spot that's helping a lot of local farms. Can you tell us a little bit about first of all, what is agritourism?
What is agritourism? Well, you know, agritourism is a whole suite or range of activities that can help to bring people to farms, to enhance sales of the farm products, and also to give people opportunities to connect with farms, to connect with the land, have experiences of being on farms. And often it's other ways of marketing what's produced on the farm. So a farmer might turn the fruits and vegetables and maybe meats and so forth raised on the farm into meals and have farm-to-table dinners, or ready to take home and heat up meals from the farm stand. Different, lots of different ways. There's so many ways our very creative and imaginative farmers have thought of to give people more opportunities to connect with farms. Agritourism, that agricultural census I mentioned that USDA conducts, they started tracking agritourism for the first time in 2002. It's not a new concept, agritourism. I just want, but they, and
rebranded like a lot of other things, I think.
Exactly. So we've gone from 2002. They had 16 farms actually report in their census that they were doing agritourism activities, and they reported $265,000 of additional income from it. Mm-hmm. By 2012, we had 190 farms, so almost 200, reporting $3.8 million in sales. Now, I think it was probably underreported in the early years because sometimes maybe even the farmers weren't thinking what I'm doing is agritourism.
Right.
But it's still, that is nearly $4 million in additional specific income, and that doesn't count what's the enhancement of what an agritourism attraction kind of strategies, like maybe having a petting zoo at a farm stand or an orchard.
Like J&F Farms here in Derry.
Exactly, a place for a children's play area where they're not actually charging extra money but it is perhaps encouraging more people to come or to spend more money while they're there, and that doesn't get picked up in that kind of numbers. So we think it's really important and growing in importance for farmers, again, here in our communities where they have lots of neighbors, and people have less opportunities to get out on the land or to experience farms. There's just such a renewed interest amongst people, amongst families, to bring their children to a farm and experience these things, whether it's picking apples or cutting their own Christmas tree or attending some kind of activity. Educational, we have farmers that are running small farm day camp programs in the summer where they're teaching kids about gardening and farming. And
to what do you attribute
science.
this kind of increase in popularity over the past dozen years or so?
I think it's related to a lot of trends that are going on, I think, in society, Will. It's I think there a sense of getting back to basics, a sense of that food and what we eat is really important, and that people want to understand the connections between food and what we eat and nature, and what it takes to produce that food. So I think, and just the environment, the appreciation for what working farms contribute to the landscape that makes New Hampshire so beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's one part, of that beautiful. It reflects our heritage, but also very much our current society and environment. And I think that's more and more people are connecting those dots and seeking those kinds of experience.
And that's great to hear. It's all connected. It's good for farms. It's good for the environment. It's good for the food system, and it's good for the economy. So I guess how do we capitalize on that? What is your department doing to kind of encourage more of this?
Well, our Division of Agricultural Development is very much engaged in making sure that consumers can find out about how they can connect with farms in their area or in an area of the state that they want to visit, and partnering with all the different farm organization producer groups for the different, whether it's maple or Christmas trees or apples or dairy farmers, to help them reach more audiences, to help with educational and informational materials. We partner really closely with the Division of Travel and Tourism in the Department of Resource and Economic Development. So if you go to visitnh.gov, which is the state's tourism website, there's all these interactive things where, depending on the season, you can locate an orchard where you can go and pick apples. You can locate a place where you can cut your own Christmas tree, within so many miles of any place that you you locate. The Division of Travel and Tourism has used a lot of agricultural scenes and imagery and activities in their advertising materials, both online and in magazines, and to their various target audiences outside of the state as well as in-state, because they are seeing this appeal of the agricultural landscape and activities.
Well, I think it's part of the New Hampshire brand, I think, and I think speaking from a chamber perspective, I think it's part of the Greater Derry Londonderry brand too. I don't know if you've visited our website, the chamber website at gdlchamber.org, but we have some sliding pictures right there across the front. One is the Robert Frost Farm, and another one is an apple orchard in Londonderry.
Right.
That's what we're known for, and it's what part of our, I think, appeal.
I think you're right, and I know I've heard people speak passionately of how they feel the Derry Farmers Market has contributed to the revitalization of the downtown. I think it's great when you see partnerships like the Chamber, including agricultural businesses in the area, and partnering together, because when people come to an orchard to pick apples and get their cider, they're very likely to stop and patronize other businesses in the area. Right. We've seen some farm businesses and other types of businesses do some really creative partnering. Some more up in the North Country, maybe because they don't have so many ready-made consumers right at hand. But with the hospitality industry, inns and hotels will do partnerships with farms, so a Christmas tree farm or apple orchard, to put together a package of a weekend, so you can come and spend your weekend in the mountains of New Hampshire and catch your own Christmas tree to take back with you to wherever you're coming from, or those kinds of things. And I think that's worked really, really well in some of our areas. So I think there's lots more opportunity for those kinds of partnerships and promotions.
Certainly, I would agree, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on any other types of ways that other organizations, those of us that are not directly involved in agriculture, can help promote it, whether it's Chamber of Commerce or municipalities or other groups. That's
that's great. There are areas where we've had some, as I mentioned, friction between maybe community regulatory agencies, boards, or neighbors, and where a town or city can really help to further better understanding and make sure that farmers don't suffer unduly from a neighbor that's got some concerns, or regulations being imposed that are more suitable for a shopping center than for a vegetable stand. That's just really important right now. We've seen sometimes there's kind of a famous case that got a lot of media attention, where a farmer in one town was proposing to put up a new chicken barn to become a contract grower for Pete and Jerry's Organic Eggs, which is one of our very successful farm businesses up in Monroe, New Hampshire. And the neighbors did not want this. They thought this was going to be just a horrible thing to have chickens in town. And as I say, 50, 60 years ago, there were very many chickens in these communities, way more than this was being proposed for. And then a second town, the same thing. They rejected it because neighbors objected, and the town boards didn't didn't approve the proposal, and the town of Boscawen actually reached out and said, you know, we'd love to have you come and build your chicken barn in our town, and that's actually
we'll take
happening.
The economic development, bring it here.
Exactly, and so that's you know, that's a case that shows, you know, a town that I think was being very forward-looking and had really reached out and assisted this farmer with finding the property and everything. The purchase has been secured, and the barn will be constructed soon. So but for farms to be what we call town friendly, farm friendly, it's really can make a very, very big difference. And having local agricultural commissions, which the statutes now allow similarly to a heritage commission. There's no regulatory powers for an agricultural commission at all. It's to promote agriculture and farming in the community, to work with the other town boards and officials to make sure that the farmer's voice is heard in those processes. So that's, you know, that's another thing that that towns can do.
Well, it's great to hear. You know, I know we often say here, and you know, viewers of this show will know based on the topics we've discussed that, you know, economic development isn't just, you know, building an industrial park, you know, out by the airport. As you know, that's great, but it's also things like tourism, like agriculture, and it kind of runs the gamut. It's anything that you know, creates value and gets money circulating in a community and in an economy. And
education. You know, making sure that we have our schools and our children and youth learn about agriculture and in their communities and have opportunities to connect.
So speaking of the future and kind of in closing here, where do you see agriculture going in New Hampshire in general and the Derry Londonderry region in particular?
Well, I'm optimistic. I think that
I would hope so.
I think there's plenty of room and opportunity for continued, you know, stability and growth in agriculture, in spite of all the challenges. But it's not going to be easy, and it really does take the support of the public and of the buying public and the neighboring public. I think we'll continue to see more extension of the season and more fruits and vegetables being grown later into the fall or winter and earlier in the spring with the help of these various greenhouse technologies. In response to this demand, I mean, there's a big new greenhouse lettuce and greens project that's going to be built in Loudon, which is really in response to this demand for fresh, local, year-round foods. That's going to be a big economic development play, and I think we'll continue to see things like that. We've seen the livestock industry come back, and we were on the verge of having no swine left in the state at all, and that has come back really quite nicely because of the demand for local meats. I mean, these farmers are completely marketing these animals locally. They're small operations, again, all over the state. Similar with beef, we had a real problem with not having adequate slaughter and processing facilities that were inspected.
We're hearing about that a few years ago, yeah.
You know, we had only one federally inspected plant in the state. Because of the demand, we now have 4. I mean, that's tremendous, and I think that just shows what the market will do.
Speaks, yeah.
And the farmers are doing the same thing. There are more livestock being raised for meat because of this demand, and they now have the access to the markets because of the federally inspected plants. So the infrastructure is another really important part of being able to grow our agriculture. And again, we have to have communities that see that, appreciate that, and allow it to happen.
It's definitely something that really the entire community, the entire state, I think has to understand and get behind. But sounds like the potential is there.
I think so. And the last time I checked, 100% of our population are eaters.
I've heard that statistic, yes. I think you're right. So we all have a vested interest.
A vested interest, yes.
Absolutely. Well, Commissioner Lorraine Merrill, thank you for joining us on Regional Roundtable. And we certainly appreciate you being here, and best of luck. And please let us know how the Chamber and the Greater Derry Londonderry region can assist you and can assist agriculture here. And I'd like to thank you for watching again. Please visit us online at gdlchamber.org for more information on the Chamber and how you can get involved as well. Thank you.